Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another comic book review. Time to close out the Phase 5 movies of 2023 with The Marvels. That was a quick intro. Now, this movie's been getting pretty controversial lately. I won't go into that because I try to remain as apolitical as possible on this channel. But basically, it's very possible to get harassed for really having any kind of opinion on this movie, so who knows what'll come of me having a positive but not overwhelmingly positive, you know, thoughts on this movie. Because I liked it. Have some issues, but overall this is definitely middle of the road for Phase 5. And yes, I will be talking about Loki for my next review. I'd say probably the thing that stood out to me the most in this movie is actually right there in the title. It's sort of just the chemistry that the three leads have together, whether it's, Kamala having this incredibly infectious charm and energy to her, which isn't very surprising for me because I liked her show so much. But also Monica having the very human aspect to the team, and then Carol, who's facing the repercussions of her attack on Hala following the first Captain Marvel. And it and I'll get to my issue with the team later, but needless to say, I did really enjoy the chemistry that each of them had together, especially this one little montage that happens in the middle of the movie where they basically have a little bonding session and it's very enjoyable. It's a bonding session where they try to, understand how the whole switching places gimmick works, but it's very fun to watch and yeah, it's just a very that's probably how I describe the whole movie in general. It's just a fun movie to watch. And I will say this probably does Thor Love and Thunder's whole thing better than Thor Love and Thunder, where that movie tried to be both a fun space comedy with some serious moments. It couldn't really it felt like it was constantly juggling the two tones. Like you'd have, goofy Thor doing split kicks and then you know, having his clothes get flicked off where he's butt naked, obviously not from the front. And then you'd have one of our main characters has cancer and the villain wants to kill all the gods. Like that feels pretty and the thing is the tone would shift between scenes in a way that wouldn't really feel natural. Here it feels like the movie really knows when to have fun and when to take things seriously and I definitely appreciate that. But on the fun side, like I said before, Miss Marvel in this movie is just great. She was great in her own show, but Iman Vellani just brings just effortless charm and likability, which I'm starting to think that maybe her performance as Kamala Khan is just her basically playing herself. Like, it's very obvious that she's really excited to be a part of the MCU, while at the same time, Kamala is very much excited to be a part of the adventure. And her fangirling over Captain Marvel is probably some of the best comedic moments in the movie. There's literally a moment where she's in the same room with her for the first time. She's getting all excited, and Carol's like, "Hold that thought." That's I'd say that's definitely one of my favorite jokes, along with a scene that comes later where, like Kamala is literally fangirling in front of her favorite superhero, and in the middle of her rambling, she takes a moment to realize, oh wait, maybe I should stop talking. Yeah. The movie is filled with a lot of really fun jokes, and unlike Love and Thunder, I know I'm comparing those two, but these two movies, but it's kind of hard to not know similarities. Yeah, but unlike Love and Thunder, I feel like there's definitely a greater sense of a better sense of comedic timing here. Like it's not so much, you know, me laughing at it because I have a stupid sense of humor and I laugh at everything, but more just because I found the stuff legitimately funny. So, it's not like Thor split kicks and the screaming goats where that's dumb, but actual dialogue and character moments. Yeah. So yeah, just not just a fun movie, but a funny movie as well, I'd say. I do also like that they were able to get creative with some of the fights. Obviously, because of the so I guess I should probably explain how the switching places gimmick works. It's basically whenever they use their powers at the same time. So of course they have to, get creative and sometimes have to rely on more physical means of combat, which I guess is easy for Kamala, but not so much for the other two because, they project light from their hands. But at the I'd say probably the biggest example of this was the first fight in the movie where it's literally switching between a Kree battleship and Kamala's house. And just the way that and the saber elevator thing that Monica's in. Like the way it switches between all three of them, it's almost like halfway through the fight they get used to the whole thing and it's like very fluid and it's very fluid and seamless and even the fight that happens on the 99% water singing planet, which I'll be honest, that whole thing is way less cringy than I thought it was going to be. Still a little bit, but not terribly so. Like even then, the way that Kamala's new costume, where she can use her scarf as a whip, that was definitely something I wasn't expecting, but also a very creative solution to, to the whole power entanglements that they're experiencing. Why haven't I been using that word? That's literally what they called it in the movie. But like even some of the scenarios that the entanglement got them into, where you have Kamala falling out of the sky and Monica has to like literally learn to fly on the fly just to save her. Yeah, it's admittedly the runtime doesn't allow them to do too much with it, but it does enough to where it keeps you engaged, or at least it kept me engaged. Now, admittedly, this is where I would get into the negative parts of the movie, but I'll touch on this thing first because it's kind of a mixed bag. The villain Dar-Benn, she's on the one hand, she's a very imposing threat. Like she's very clearly someone with a lot of power, where she not only has, the accuser hammer thing that has a name, but I forgot what it was, but also Kamal, the other bangle that belonged to Kamala's grandmother. Like the like the stuff that she's able to do simply by slamming the hammer onto the bangle, it's legitimately what's the word? Yeah, it's it's really intense and kind of results in some of the more I don't want to use intense in the same sentence, but I'm going to anyways. It results in some of the more intense moments in the movies where she'd open up a wormhole and it would just destroy the place it's in. So, very imposing and threatening villain. There's not really much of an interesting character there. Like, she literally reminds me of all the villains from the Infinity Saga, where their motivation was scorn for Tony Stark. Just here, replace that with scorn for Carol Danvers. So, yeah, on the one hand, threatening villain, very, threatening and dangerous villain, just not an interesting character. So, moving on to some of the more straightforward negative stuff. Admittedly, a lot of it isn't really that big, but it is stuff that kind of weighed the experience down for me. First of all, the whole side plot with Goose reproducing, that was stupid and pointless and kind of resulted in the most cringeworthy scene in the movie, at least to me. Like, it probably would have been fine if they didn't play a song from Cats over it. No, I'm not kidding. That is actually something they did. Yeah. Another sort of minor issue is that during some of the fight scenes, this isn't something that Kamala did because obviously she doesn't shoot light, she turns it into physical matter and then uses it weapons. But there are points where it's established one time, kind of early on in the movie, that shooting the bangle that Dar-Benn is wearing with the light energy, powers her up. which obviously the first time they wouldn't know it, but they do it again later on in the movie, and I'm sitting there just thinking, why did you do that? If it's a thing where it's like a tactical move on Dar-Benn's end, yeah, I get that, but it didn't look like it. It looked more like, it looked more like she was surprised as well. So that was kind of a weird inconsistency, I guess. It feels weird calling it that because it doesn't feel like a plot hole. It just feels like a frustrating thing that happened because this happened earlier in the movie, so why are you doing it again? Another thing, this is somewhat positive because I do like what they were trying to do. I just don't think they really paid it off all that well. There's a part of the movie where Monica is trying to reconnect with Carol because they haven't seen each other in 40 years. But I feel like they don't really do a lot to explain why Carol's been gone for such a long period of time. Like, I understand that she went to Hala and destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, which, first of all, nice that they actually got a comic accurate Supreme Intelligence in this movie and not the bullshit from the first film. But after that, there's like a whole period between that and the end of Infinity War where she shows up. Yes, I know she doesn't actually show up in Infinity War chronologically when she shows up. And even then, between the finale of Endgame and the Marvels. Yeah. Yeah. But then again, I feel like that could have I feel like that's definitely, a bit of a consequence of what I'd call the movie's biggest issue, and that's the runtime. Now, unlike Eternals, where the runtime caused the movie to feel overstuffed because they were doing a show's work with a movie's runtime, here it feels like they're not really able to develop that much because the movie is only an hour and 45. So while I do like the chemistry between the three leads, their relationship the relationship doesn't feel as developed as it should, especially when you get into the finale. And no, I'm not going to spoil that. Where you get into the finale and there's this big scene that's meant to be emotional, that's meant to pull out the emotions, but the most that it pulled out for me was just kind of an "aw, that's sweet" from one particular moment that happened. When in reality, like, it's supposed to be like, I feel like the moment was supposed to be a tearjerker, but it didn't really accomplish that. So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the movie ended up being a little underdeveloped, but I still had a ton of fun with it. And that really is the best way I could describe this movie, and that's fun. And for at least providing a fun experience, I'll give it a solid 3.5 out of 5. Definitely could have been better, could have developed some stuff more, whether that be, the relationship between the three leads to, you know, allow us to help us care more about them, or even, making Dar-Benn more interesting. I feel like at least making the movie 2 hours long could have remedied that. But as it is, it's still pretty fun. Now, the big question I'm sure a lot of you are asking is like, what do I need to watch in order to understand this movie? Because obviously, a lot of people have seen the first Captain Marvel, but of course, some people haven't seen WandaVision. A lot of people haven't seen Miss Marvel. So, what should I watch? Simple. Go on Disney Plus and watch the Legend shorts that they put out for this movie. They put out one for each lead. They're each the length of a Bluey episode, and I have absolutely no idea why Marvel doesn't promote this, because this is like, if watching the TV shows is like is if watching the TV shows is homework, this is like having the answer sheet. It's like comparing hours of homework to half an hour of homework. Honestly, this whole thing only has three big issues. One, Marvel is doing absolutely nothing to promote it. Two, it's not available anywhere but Disney Plus, so if you don't have Disney Plus, you're shit out of luck. And three, if you're trying to if you have someone who's just getting into the MCU with Phase 4 and they're really busy, and you're using this to give them all the context they need, if you want to get them ready for No Way Home, you're also shit out of luck. I mean, hey, at least the other two movies are on the platform, so could be worse. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for my review on the Marvels. If you enjoyed, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all the generic stuff. See you guys in the next video. Take care. Please be nice.